It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and of course, you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. It is early in the morning on a Sunday, and you can tell it's early in the morning because my voice is still a little extra gravelly. I love recording at this time of day, right after I get up, and my apologies for being so late since my last episode. I have been more busy than I should be, but, you know, job security and all that stuff. It's good fun. Today's show, we're going to talk about 401ks in a couple of little segments, what you should do with your 401k in a general sense, because I can't give specific personalized opinions on your 401k because of Department of Labor rules, which I've talked about many times. If you have questions about that, of course, you can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Today, we have a wonderful interview with a personal friend of mine, not even just a friend of the show, but personal friend David Fitzgerald has not one, not two, but three brand new books coming out, or that have already just come out, about God and the history of God and how God's work as a concept across the entire planet, across all of history. Absolutely fantastic series. You're going to love it. And of course, it's out just in time for Christmas for your favorite friends, families, kids, whoever needs it, whoever wants it, whoever will enjoy it. So, the other thing I have right here, hear that? In the mail, I get stuff in the mail, just like everybody else. This was like, what the fuck is this? This says, final events. What will happen next? And then there's some dates, and I don't know why those dates, but it's July 15th through July 27th. And then on the back, I'm being invited to a 3-day, I don't know, fuckarama seminar. I don't know what to call this. I guess there's more events that aren't in the schedule on the front. But the headline on the back says, "The Bible has predicted world events with 100% accuracy." And it kind of goes downhill from there. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but the first event that I might go to, I don't know. It's so freaking close to me. I worry that if I show up, there's going to be like 8 people there, and they're going to want to talk to me. And I don't really generally, I mean, white lies I do, but I don't really lie. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. And so if they ask me direct questions about my beliefs, it's going to get awkward. So maybe I just don't put myself in the position. But if you want to go on the 15th of July at 6 p.m., it says, "The Rise and Fall of World Empires." The next event is Prophecy's Final One World Power. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. And then the third one is The Dismantling of America's Morals. Yeah, great. I can only imagine what kind of fuckery and hate speech is going to be in that bitch. And it's funny because it is free supper each night at 6 o'clock. Do we use supper anymore? That sounds like something out of Charlie Brown to me. Supper time from the 60s or 70s. Do we use supper? Do you use supper? I don't know. So anyway, if someone really wants to go and take notes and then report back to me, maybe we can make a fun show segment. It is in the northwest Orlando suburb of Apopka. So if you're dying to do something stupid, let me know. Maybe you can go in my place because I might not make it, but I thought I'd share that with you. other fun stuff, I already have recorded an interview, and hopefully it'll be in the next show or two, of a deconstruction. Somehow in the last few years, we've switched from deconversion to deconstruction. I don't know that I care, but it's fascinating how things happen with words. And I also have scheduled an interview with Amanda Mercat, and she writes, oh my gosh, I should have looked this up. I'm pretty sure it's Salon and maybe other media sources. And she has been writing, political stuff for a long time, and she's been on the show several years ago, and my apologies for not having her on more often. Maybe we'll fix that going forward. But we are going to talk about Project 2025. Yes, you've heard about it. I've watched YouTube videos. I've listened to other podcasts. I've not yet read the document, and I don't know that I'm going to, because it's 920 fucking pages. And one of the reasons I want to have someone who is already done the work come on and talk with me about it. So we're going to have a genuine political expert come on and talk about it, and not just me ranting about how evil it is, because I just did that. See, it's evil. Project 2025. You know what? If you want to prep for the show, or even if you don't want to prep for the show, you should do some research and learn what Project 2025 is. In short, because now I can't stop myself, I'm thinking about it. It is a blueprint. It is a roadmap that, if Trump gets elected, a sequence of events and timing of what he can do, how fast he can do it, because last time he won, it was kind of an accident. I'm confident no one thought he was going to do it. It would have been better if he didn't, but he won, and it was just a comic shit show where he hired and fired the best people at a rate never have seen it before on the planet of the earth. All the best people, and one after another has been convicted of crimes, gone to jail. Somehow he's avoided all that stuff. But if there's a second chance, there's not going to be this fucking around, right? So we're going to talk about that in depth. So strap in for that future episode, not today. Today we're going to talk with Fitzgerald, like I mentioned earlier, about biblical history and other world religions and the history of gods in general, and how that whole process works. Anywho, that's enough of an introduction. We're going to take a quick pause, get into some segments about 401ks, and then we'll learn more about the history of God and gods. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This Investing Skeptically segment is on a self-directed 401k, or I guess the topic of self-directed 401k. Thank you to the show listener who sent me the information. Their employer has a 401k, and it allows you to open up an additional, a supplementary, an alternate account that's a self-brokerage 401k. Now, keep in mind, because of the Department of Labor rules, none of this, and even the response to the listener, none of this is personalized investment advice. I'm not telling you what you should do within your 401k. I'm just going to provide you educational information on a generic system-wide level. So this may not be the right thing for you at all to even think about or do. Consult with your own financial advisor or tax consultant before taking any action, of course. So a self-directed 401k. The nice thing about this is that you can have a lot of choices. Some 401k plans are awful. Some of them are really good. Some of them have index funds, which anyone who listens to the show regularly knows that I love index funds, and most people should be using them. With the self-directed brokerage, you can have a whole new universe open up. You can buy individual stocks inside of your 401k. You can buy individual bonds. You might even be able to buy annuities. You might be able to buy shares into a hedge fund or a limited liability corporation or a non-traded REIT or all the other stuff that I tell you not to buy. So you have that wide open flexibility to invest in many, many more things. Is that good though? I mean, if there's things that I don't like, things that I don't want to use, it's like allowing me to buy a steaming pile of turds. But great, I can buy it. Doesn't mean I want to or should. So that's the first problem. Another thing that is a problem with self-directed 401k accounts is often that there's additional expenses. Of course, you have annual expense, management expense. You might have an advisor there. You might have transaction costs that are equal to or higher than just having a taxable brokerage account. But it's probably not going to be as cheap and affordable as investments in your 401k, particularly if you look for things that are 0.2% or less, something like a total stock market index, a S&P 500 index. And if you're fortunate enough that you have a portfolio that's bigger than just your 401k, this doesn't work if you're maybe 25 and you have almost all of your money in a 401k. After many years of working and you've rolled out old 401ks into IRAs, what goes in your new 401k may not matter so much. So if it's 5 or 10 or 20,000, or even if it's a couple hundred and you've got millions of dollars, it's perfectly fine if you get forced to use just the S&P 500 index fund inside of your 401k. You can adjust out of that possibly and other accounts that you have at Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, wherever. So the one thing that I think a self-directed 401k account might be good for is that if you happen to have a 401k, first of all, with a generous amount of money in it, yay you, but really, really fucking shitty choices. So if all of the funds are managed funds, there's not a single index fund. If the expense ratios are 1.5, or 2% on all the investment choices that you have, you're already paying high fees and getting underperformance. So if you then can go to a self-directed 401k and buy something like the Vanguard Total Stock Market or all of the bond and stock funds that I use and recommend and talk about on a regular basis, if those all become available to you, you could have a net considerably lower expenses. So it could be right for some people. The other thing to keep in mind is that if your employer plan allows you to have a self-directed account, they might also allow you to do a thing called in-service distributions. And every company is different. It's allowed by the law, but not every company puts it in the legal document that runs their plan. So you'd have to check with your HR department. There's a possibility you could get an honest and correct and fully educated answer from them, but it's also possible that they don't know what you're talking about. You can call the custodian. So if your 401k is held at Fidelity, for example, you can call Fidelity, and once they confirm your identity and that you work for that company, they'll be much more expert on what your plan does and does not allow. And so to me, in this situation, the magic phrase is in-service distribution, which means you can move money out of your 401k or 403b or similar type of an account while still working for your employer. It might limit only $50,000 can go out in a year. It might limit, you have to be there for so many years before you can take any money out. It might say only money that's been in for 3 years can be taken out. It might have a percentage limitation. So you have to understand all those rules and what you can do. But if you can have an in-service distribution, again, not personalized investment advice for anyone listening, but this is something you could do. You could do a in-service distribution via a rollover to an IRA that you set up in some other company, some other qualified custodian or brokerage firm. Then you could move it to the IRA and manage it just like any other dollars that are in your IRA. So that reduces your dependence on your employer's 401k and would also open up a whole lot of things that you can invest in inside of your IRA. Inside of the IRA, there's still limitations, things that you may not be able to buy, but I'm pretty sure 99% of those things that you aren't going to be able to buy, I don't think you should be buying them anyway. So you might be able to have a self-directed 401k or do an in-service distribution from your 401k to an IRA where you could have many more choices, investment possibilities. I don't want to use the word options because that means something else in the industry, but you can have more choices, and you might even be able to lower your expense ratios on the money that is rolled over to an IRA held somewhere else. So just some information to think about: self-directed 401k versus in-service distribution of part of your money in a 401k to an IRA. I do have some clients that do that based on the rules of their plan. Every year they move more money out based on the rules of your employer's plan. Hope that helps.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
My name is Annie Drian, and I'm founder of Cosmos Studios and honored to have been the longtime collaborator of Carl Sagan. And I'd like to say that I think it's just the opposite of what you're saying from my perspective, humbly. One is that I think that science tolerates the unknown in a way that religion doesn't. My argument is not with people who search for God. My argument is with people who feel that our understanding of God is completed. And those are the people who make so much of our existence on this planet such a hell, because they really think that they have the right to kill other people, to hurt them, because of what they understand God's will to be. That's a very destructive thing. So science is, the whole methodology of science is saying that we are not permitted these absolute truths that religion pretends to have, that we do not know the answer to these questions, and not only that, but the little that we think we do know, if you can prove us wrong, we'll give you our highest reward. And that's part of the methodology. That's part of the whole functioning of the system itself. So yes, in answer to what Joan was saying earlier, scientists do terrible things. Scientists have biases. Religious people do terrible things, and they have biases. But absolutely intrinsic to the whole the methodology of science is that error-correcting mechanism, which says we must never lose sight of that. That's not in religion. That's not present at all. Talk about humble. It's the fact that we do science and that we can bring ourselves to see that little tiny earth in Carolyn's presentation. That is humility. What science has done for us spiritually is that it has been the only thing that I know of that has compelled us to wean ourselves of our infantile need for centrality. And that was present, that is very much the essence of so many religious formulations of where we come from, why we came to be. It's the sign of mental health, that we can bear to think that this planet was perfectly fine for 4.5 billion years without us. That cosmic evolution goes on for 13.5 billion years before we even get here. How long have we been in science? How long have we systematically been looking at nature? Not even 400 years. And yet science gets us out to Enceladus. It takes us out of the solar system. It enables us to wean ourselves of that spiritual narcissism which compelled us to be at the center of everything. So when it comes to humility, when it comes to a tolerance for ambiguity and for the unknown, I think science worships the unknown. I think scientists are most comfortable in that place of not knowing. And that's where they live. And that's the great strength of science. So I would respectfully disagree.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation And you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. I just want to do a quick mini segment on where small and old 401ks go to die. And this may happen to you. And it's one of the reasons, while this is not specific investment advice and may not be in your best interest, and of course, I cannot render opinion on your specific 401k or 403b because of the Department of Labor rules. In a general sense, I think it's really good to move your money out of your 401k. Move it to wherever the fuck you want, but don't leave it with your former employer. A couple of different things can happen in general terms. The former employer could change the investment advisor, the custodian for the 401k for the purposes of saving themselves money, and the new funds could have dramatically higher fees, and you really don't get a say in it. This can actually happen while you're working with a company, but it can also happen after you're no longer working there if you leave your 401k. So moving it to something like an IRA, where you could probably have way lower expense ratios, better access to index funds, general advice again, and more options and more choices. Options is a tricky word, but more choices what to do with your money is probably going to be a better way to go. But there's also this other category, and I don't know what to call these companies, and I'm only aware of a few of them. I mean, I've done this for like 28, 29 years, but one of them is called Millennial Trust, and they just changed their name to Inspira. And this came up because one of my clients found that they had an old small 401k that somehow got transferred into an IRA at Inspira. Now, whether there was paperwork, whether they knew about this when it happened, or if the former employer just offloaded these accounts for the benefit of the former employer, the benefit of the former employee, I don't know the exact details. But these companies will take these IRAs that are funded from your old 401k, and it almost only happens to small retirement accounts like under $5,000. And so it'll move over into an IRA, and it will just sit there. They may contact you. They may send you documents. They seem to have a lower than average ability to track people down when they move. In this day of modern age and data availability, junk mail finds me quite easily. So why these guys have a problem finding people, I don't know. But I do know that they charge something like $50 or $75 to open your IRA. Then they charge you something like $35, $40 a month or a quarter to manage your IRA, or to hold your IRA. And often, if they don't have any word from you, and you may not even know these guys have your money, they just leave it as cash. They leave it as cash and hit you up for something like $25, $35, $40 a quarter, or even monthly. And your account just gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time. They don't really do anything other than taking the burden off your former employer or the custodian of your former employer, who would never feel that it would be acceptable to charge you $35 a month. But companies like this apparently think it's okay. So they have difficulty finding you. They have difficulty getting you documents. I'm sure they meet any and all legal requirements, but they're just not efficient. They're not effective, and they charge you $35 a month. And your amount of money there just goes down, 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 until you find it, or until they happen to find you, or you think, wow, what happened to that 401k that I had at that company 6 years ago? And you might figure it out. You can call your former employer and ask them what service they use for small accounts, and you might find it. In this case, it's down to a very small amount. And now we're going through the painful process of trying to move the funds. And of course, it's one of those things that is very, very common with me in the investment world. Sometimes it's the smallest accounts that cause the biggest problems. And this is one of those examples. So hopefully everything goes really well, and within a few days or a few weeks, this money will move and we can put it to better use, but it is now dramatically less than what the client had a couple of years ago when they left that former employer. So in general, it is better for you to move 401k or 403b money out of your former employer or your former employer's custodian, probably more likely, into an IRA that you control. Please keep in mind, this is not specific advice for you, particularly because of the Department of Labor regulations on what I can and can't say about employer-sponsored plans. So check with your own financial expert, do your own due diligence, check with your accountant, but seriously consider if you have 401k money or something like that left, pension, whatever, left with the former employer. If you can move it, maybe you should. All right, just hang tight. We're going to go on to more fun stuff.
Pace e lunga vita.
Lunga vita e prosperità.
Do you mind spending 30 seconds on dark matter just for the heck of it? So when we observe galaxies, we find that they're spinning around at such a rate that stars on the edge should be flung outwards, sort of like water droplets on a bicycle wheel that's spinning fast, water gets flung out. Yeah. But the stars aren't getting flung out. Something must be holding them in. We don't see anything that can do that, but we know gravity has the power to hold things together. So we imagine that maybe there's some matter out there that we don't see, dark matter. That's why we don't see it. It doesn't give off light. And that matter is exerting a gravitational pull, holding those stars together in these spinning galaxies. And when we make that hypothesis, it explains observation so spectacularly well that we begin to gain confidence that maybe the stuff that we haven't yet seen and we haven't yet touched or smelled yet, maybe it's real. So we build big detectors and we try to capture one of these dark matter particles. We haven't succeeded yet, but I think that we will. So this is a beautiful example of how observations drive rational thinking to explain the facts and ultimately verify it through observation and experiment that can be replicated. That is what science is.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
All right, everybody. Now I have David Fitzgerald. David, how the hell are you?
I'm good. Well, I say I'm good, but news has been kind of crazy lately. But the good news is
the good news is
out.
Drum roll. Brrr, you have a big announcement, right? And what is that announcement?
I do. The books I've been working on for the last 3 years are now out, and people can buy them and read them.
And just like that other author, Tolkien, you split it into thirds.
Exactly. Yeah, if you remember last time we left our heroes, he had written Jesus, Mything in Action, which was supposed to be one book and turned into 3 books. Well, surprise, surprise, that we've got a new book called Playing God, An Evolutionary History of World Religion. So with that light, breezy topic, it turned out, whoa, that turned into 3 books too, just like that. Boom.
And let's see here. We have Volume 1, The Evolution of God and the Gods of Monotheism. I can't read, but that's okay.
Gods of Monotheism. Yep.
Volume 2, Judaism and Christianity. Volume 3, Islam and the Eastern religions. I was going to say it's chronological, but Eastern religions can be older than Judaism. Well, maybe not Judaism, Christianity at least.
For sure. Yeah, it's not meant to be in any chronological order, though it's roughly in chronological order.
Yeah.
In that we first start talking about the evolutionary stages that all religions seem to go through, all the major world religions. Well, actually, the first part is all religions, period.
Yeah.
From the Stone Age to modernity. And then talking about the second half of that book is just talking about the crazy zigzaggy evolution and development of monotheism and how it's just not as smooth the evolution as we always thought it was. It actually zigs and zags, and there could have been a lot other. There were a lot of other gods who could have been the one true God that gave Yahweh a run for his money. And it's funny because when I first set out to write this book, I figured part 1 would be the evolution of God, go through those evolutionary stages. Part 2 would be the development of of monotheism, and then part 3 would be checking out the backstories of all the major religious founder figures. And as it has wont to do, once you start looking at the origins of religions, there's just so much to tell. Historians know this. There's been research done in the last 2 or 3 years that have really blown off the lid in Judaism and in Islam, for instance, and it just hasn't made its way to the public yet. And I'm really excited to get this out there and just kind of showcase all the recent scholarship and the changes going on throughout the fields of biblical studies and religious studies in general.
Absolutely.
What's happening there.
It's
amazing. It's amazing to me.
Just a few weeks ago, I was arguing with somebody, which is always a mistake on Facebook, and they said that virtually all biblical scholars, including atheists, agree that Jesus existed and is God. And I thought, wait, even the atheists agree that there is a God? I don't understand. So maybe, I'm not, maybe I am an expert, but let's just say I'm not an expert for a moment. From the sample size of what you know, not an official formal survey, but when you've met or talked to any atheist, self-proclaimed atheist biblical scholars, do they accept Jesus as God?
Well, funny thing, they don't, in fact.
Wow.
In fact, whenever I hear anybody talk about the overwhelming consensus of anything, but especially anything in biblical studies, it's kind of a joke because, for one thing, if you take all the biblical scholars in the world, it's split already right down the middle between the secular ones and the religious affiliated ones, who all have their own Jesuses of their own. But all of the secular scholars, they're what they call the historical Jesus, completely debunks the Jesus of faith, quote unquote. And really, both of those figures are placeholders for just a whole family tree of different Jesuses. Because when you get all the secular scholars in the same room and say, okay, well, what do we know for sure about Jesus? What do we think he was and did, and where that goes? There's no consensus at all on anything, basically. And it's funny to watch how quickly the certain facts that we have about Jesus just go out the window until it's down. Well, he was a boy and he lived in the 1st century, maybe. It's so funny to see how those have been getting whittled away over time.
Yeah.
But I don't want to even focus too much on Jesus in this book. Because I've done that for the last 20 years on all the other books.
Fair enough.
This one actually says it's not just Jesus that has a dodgy backstory. When you go to basically anybody we love in the Old Testament, all the way up until about Hezekiah, they're just either full out mythical or they're completely legendary. There's just no truth to them whatsoever. And when you finally get to around the time when there is actual Judean and Israelite history to be had, we're getting propaganda from their side. So even the stories about real people they tell aren't real stories.
And of course,
so it's amazing the different kinds of lies that the Bible tells us.
And that's fixed in other religions, right? Or corrected, right? With Islam, it's not fictional, and with Scientology and what's the thing in Utah? The they got the big towers.
Mormons?
Yeah, the ones with the magic underwear.
Yes.
That's all clearly documented and factually accurate.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, it's been fun seeing what's been happening in Mormonism the last few years too.
What has been happening? I'm oblivious.
Oh, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, that's for another book.
Yeah. But I think the thing that blew me away, 3 years ago, I was working on sex and violence in the Bible. My favorite talk, I just thought it would make a great book. And about halfway through that, I started hearing about what scholars like Russell Gmerkin have been uncovering about the Old Testament, and what historians like Sean Anthony and Stephen Shoemaker have been finding out about the origins of Islam. And it just blew my mind so much to find out that archaeologists like Jonathan Adler in Tel Aviv have just within the last not even 2 years, have come up with the archaeological evidence that says, Judaism is not that old. it only goes back to about the 3rd century BC, and that's about 1,000 years or more younger than we always ever thought it was.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they found the Ark again.
I saw a great quote. I wish I'd put it in the book. Said every expedition that's gone in search of the Noah's Ark has found it.
Well, they moved it, and it's now in Kentucky, right? I mean,
I think you've been there, seen that firsthand, haven't you?
I've not actually been inside. I've been on the perimeter of the property. I have friends that have gone inside, but I was amused by many architectural features of the Ark that was built in Kentucky, which included something like 60 rebar reinforced concrete pillars to hold up the structure. Because
concrete pillars. Wait, wasn't it gopher wood and pitch?
Yeah,
held together with pitch?
Because the architect said that a wooden structure of that size could not safely be built, and then the local fire department made them put in a lake because they said if it ever caught fire, there wouldn't be enough water to put it out if there wasn't a lake next to it.
Oh my goodness!
So
Oakenham.
Yeah, God.
Will you
good
never
stuff.
win?
It's funny. I have recently interviewed somebody who was brought up as a Ute, believe in all that stuff, but hopefully, he can now read these books. By the way, Plain God, a trilogy of trilogies, all released on one day, like many years ago when Green Day released 1, 2, and 3 albums on one day. Yep. And of course, everyone, they're now on Amazon after a little bit of hiccups, from what I understand, and they're available for purchase, and you can go ahead and order an extra set for Christmas presents, right?
Well, they make the perfect Christmas present.
They do. Sure. Just in time for the fallen and risen deity or others.
And I was going to say, if any of your listeners want to just get an autographed copy, just contact me directly. I'm very happy to sell them directly.
And how do they contact you directly?
Oh, let's see. Probably the easiest way is Facebook, but you can always shoot me an email at everybodylovesdave@gmail.com. And again, I'm happy to do it.
And at Facebook, it's facebook.com, David Fitzgerald, FITZGERALD. And then I think the magical number after that is .33633.
Is it? Oh, that's a good thing to know. Because there's a lot of David Fitzgerald floating around out there.
Apparently. I happen to be...
Usually if you Google up, Dave Fitzgerald atheist or Dave Fitzgerald hates Jesus or something like that. Something should come up.
If you take that 33633 and you fold it in half upon itself and add it together, you would get 666.
Bum, bum, bum.
Numerology, because it's so meaningful. And I'm assuming the readers should, of course, buy all three. They start with volume 1 of the trilogy here,
yes.
and
that is exactly right. Yeah.
That's going to cover the olden days.
Yeah, that's going to talk about just evolution in general and some early stuff about Yahweh and monotheism and Zoroastrianism and all these other religious, I wouldn't call them movements, but evolutionary stages that all over the world, throughout time, throughout whatever area we're talking about, these are the stages that all the religions seem to go through. And then after book 1, I just focus on mostly the top 10 religions and just give the founder figure's story a kick and just check the tires on that. And long story short about that happened because as a side effect of looking into the historicity of Jesus, I kept having Buddhists come up to me and saying, yeah, we're having the same discussions in our circles about whether the Buddha really existed or not. Ex-Muslims would come to me and say, yeah, we're having the same debates in our circles about whether Muhammad existed or not. And so it really blew my mind that this was floating around, and you never hear people talk about those guys being fake. Well, maybe Buddha, but certainly not Muhammad. And yet, when you look at what we have uncovered in the last, not even decade, even just very recently, the evolution of the Quran, the evolution of Islam, the evolution of Muhammad's story. It blows my mind how shaky all of the major world religious figures' backstory is, to the point where there may have been some of the early Sikh leaders may have been real, maybe, but most of them across the board all seem to be completely made up for political reasons.
I would go with almost all, because I'd hate to think that you're including Thor in this, because I think that's probably the most devout listeners I have.
Well, I had to draw the line at the top 10 major ones today. So the Thor worshippers I love them as I do. I did not touch the Thor issue.
And did you discuss
also Jupiter? My father Jupiter.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I just let the whole Olympic pantheon go. Yeah.
Wow.
But we do touch on Rastafarians, Pastafarians, Scientology.
Oh, what's the alien
Baha'is,
one that
Mormons.
started in France? Aurelians?
Aurelians.
Aurelians?
Euralians, yes, thank you. No, I didn't touch them either.
Wow.
Yeah. Scientology is about as far as I went into the fringe. Also ran.
Yeah.
Honorable mention. But
I mean, there's been so many other successful religions. I mean, you had the guys with the Hale-Bopp comet and the guys in Waco, Texas.
Yeah.
Oh, did you cover the what is it? Shakers? Are they the ones that kept men and women separate, which obviously is not good for the growth prospects of a religion?
Yeah, it's funny how that worked out, didn't it?
Yeah.
But actually, I didn't talk to them because these are the big ticket items.
Yeah.
It's like all of Mormonism, all of Christianity, all of Islam, all of Buddhism. It's definitely a zoom out approach, talking about their development, and
so,
we could spend encyclopedia just parsing out and this little snippet here and this little snippet here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go right to the source and say, boom, this is where this all started, and this is how dodgy it is.
And so one of the big threads here you're talking about is that there's not really good documentation from the founding and the source and the people mentioned in the old stories. And
yeah, and it's very funny how world religions, they all seem so different. They all have their own vocabulary and their art and their language and their theology. But when you look at the big picture and zoom out and look at their origins and their development, they all start to look the exact same. The rules may change, the theology may be different, but the way they are formed and the way they develop all look the same, including the fact that the further back you look at any one of them, the more dodgy their history is, the less information we have, and the more contradictory information we have about it.
Is that just because you've hardened your heart?
Doubtless that is why. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So we've got a lot to go over with these. What else should we discuss? Because I'm kind of my apologies, because I was traveling and stuff. Normally I will have read in entirety a book. In this case, I don't know that I would have even read all three, but I'm kind of going in blind here. So tell me what more is in one. Give me some details. Flesh it out for me.
Well, it was interesting. One of the things I looked into was Robert Wright's book, The Evolution of God, Daniel Dennett's book, Breaking the Spell, Pascal Boyer's book, Religion for Atheists, and all these different evolutionary approaches to the origins of religion. And that's fascinating. We're far from knowing all the ins and outs of that, but just what we've uncovered already is amazing, because like the earliest stages of religion, before we were even human, you see evolutionary survival mechanisms that later got co-opted into religion. The earliest human societies that we can think of, it appears that they didn't have religion at all. They worshipped, they knew the sun was a god, they knew the moon was a god, if this was a god, that was a god, but they didn't worship, they didn't interact with any of these beings. It was just, they're the boss, or, they're bigger than we are, and so, that's that. And there were certain rules to appease them or, not get on their bad side, but there was no such thing as, a religion as we know it until you get the development of what we call shamans, and there's different names for them too, but basically they are the guys who said, oh yeah, I'll be the middleman between you and the gods, and that's where we get to start. And when the shaman hooks up with the leader, or when the leader becomes a shaman, you get just exponential growth of religious structures and dogmas and power structures. And it's really funny to see that the same things we're dealing with, they were dealing with in the Stone Age and in tribal situations. And when you go from there to like chieftains, as your society gets bigger and more inclusive and reaches out to neighboring societies to have their own gods, you see how things like pantheons develop. You see how transcendent gods develop, where it's like it's one god for everybody, and now he's not just the hill god, he's not just the sky god or the god of the sea, he's god of everything. And the idea of what a god is just keeps getting bigger and bigger, more inclusive, more transcendent as cosmopolitan empires become a thing. And when that happens, there's a thing that some historians like to call the axial age. And what it really is it's this age of these cosmopolitan empires where you get the power structures actively creating a religion for everybody, for all their subjects, to help unite their empires.
Oh,
and that's where we get on East and West, that's where we get all the ones that became our major world religions.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
It served a purpose greater than its own. Did that? Is that? I mean, it.
There's definitely some kind of gestalt there.
Yeah.
And one kind of debate that goes back and forth is, well, like what you might call the Marxist historians say, yeah, it's all a scam and it's all exploiting the masses. And then you have the other, what they call compatibilists or functionalists, where they say, well, yeah, but it provided this and that, this service for the people and gave them comfort and whatnot. And the truth is, the religions that survived and flourished and became the top dogs in the religious world are the ones that did both at the same time.
I was just going to say, why does it have to be one? Why does it have to be one or the other? It can do both.
Exactly. Yeah. People tend to focus on one or the other, but the fact is, the ones that survived did both. And we've got, a whole graveyard of religions that didn't survive, but it's an evolutionary process. It's a Darwinian jungle, and always has been.
Now, if I understand correctly, these are in print, but so far not in ebook and not in audiobook.
As soon as I hang up with you, I'm going to be talking to the formatters and hope to have the ebook out anytime, maybe even as early this week. We'll see. So that's right around the corner. Audiobook, I just have to work with my sound engineer and get our schedules to mingle.
Yeah.
And that won't happen until I get back from Canada in mid-August. So that's either going to come out late this fall or early next spring, I think.
And
if I had to guess.
By Canada, you're alluding to Bahacon.
I am alluding to Bahacon, and I cannot wait for that.
Yes.
Are you and Mrs. Phil going to be there?
We will both be there, and
fantastic.
I've already had at least one person on from the event to talk about the event, so my listeners should, by the way, already know about that. I don't know if it's sold out, but I'll have to pull the website and exact dates.
The last time I was talking to them, the ticket sales were really brisk, and they were afraid there weren't going to be enough tickets for everyone to take the boat tour, which, granted, you don't go to a conference for that, but it was such a fun thing. It's really worth not missing out on that. It was fantastic.
Was great fun. So we have Playing God, Volume 1, 2, and 3. Is there anything in general about these books or something you're working on that we haven't covered that we need to still get to?
Just maybe that there are a lot of surprises for everybody in this book, and in these three books, rather. The surprises in the Old Testament and Judaism, the surprises in Islam, and the surprises in all the Eastern religions and their origins. There's a lot of stuff that'll really blow your mind. I love all my books equally. They're all very special, but I'm super excited about this one because it's getting into stuff that I didn't know even 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it's mind blowing. It really is just mind blowing what we know about the origins of these religions now.
And so there's super secret plot twists. You got to read it to find out. And I'm not saying that the butler did it, but anywho, David, thank you so much for taking your precious time to come and talk to me and visit with the listeners of the Phil Ferguson Show.
I'm delighted to do it, and I can't wait to come back. And I hope to see you and all of you at Bahacon too. That really is a blast, and you get to talk to people you love, right up close and personal. It's just a really lovely, lovely event. I'm really happy about it.
Absolutely. Well, David, once again, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am so delighted you're here, and thank you. Thank you very much for listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. Hopefully you enjoyed listening almost as much as I like making it. I wish I had more time to do this every single week. I had been for a while doing one about every 10 days. This was a bigger gap, and again, my apologies for that. Enjoyed the 4th of July. Hopefully you did the same. And of course, we drove from Chicago to Orlando, which we did over 2 days because it's a really long one-day drive. But back in Orlando, enjoying the heat. I think the second day when we drove down, the thermostat in the car in the car, so that the outside temperature was around 100, and of course 90-something% humidity, feel like temperature 110, 112, that kind of thing. Since then, thankfully, it was in the mid-90s, and now it's around 92 to 88 every day for the next 10 or 12 days, generally speaking. So, normal hot. The amazing thing is in the afternoon, most of the time, even in summer, while it is humid, it's only about 55% humidity in the afternoon. So I don't think that's horrible. There will be some people who listen who live in places where the humidity goes from 7 to 8% on a really humid day, and you're going to be freaking out about 56% humidity. I get that. I just never really enjoyed it being that dry. And the thing that's amazing is that in Chicago, in the Midwest, in large parts of the Midwest, it gets that humid also, and probably even worse than hot and humid is cool and humid. And you can get this in Chicago and other places, of course, where you wake up in the morning, it's 72 degrees, but you walk outside and it's 100, maybe 102% humidity. That is just dreadful. I think I'd rather have moderate to high humidity with a good warm temperature than that lower temperature of 70 degrees with 100% humidity. Just yuck. Anywho, enough about that. Other things bouncing around in my head. I have officially decided to make a tweak to my model portfolio that I start with in my head. And you're going to have to wait a little bit because I'm currently going through all of my client accounts and making this adjustment. I mean, you're going to get it for free, but you have to wait a little bit. So people that are paying me do get some perks that you don't get for free on the show. And of course, if you want someone to help you manage your portfolio, you can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Haven't talked about this in a while, but my current minimum for new clients is $2 million of assets that I can manage. So your farmland doesn't count. If you own a business, it doesn't count. The equity in your house doesn't count. Your 401k doesn't count. It needs to be in a taxable account, IRA, some combination of that. But, I'm a reasonable person. So if you have a really high income job or you own a business and you don't have 2 million yet, but you want some help and suggestions at planning how to manage those funds. As an example, I've talked about it briefly on the show. If you have a small business And particularly if you are in your 40s or 50s or even early 60s, if you could set up a pension for your company and sock away $100 or $200, maybe even $300,000 a year, if you have the sufficient income, of course, into a pension plan and defer income taxes. So for a few years, 10 or 15 years, your last years where you're finally making really big money after paying off all your university debts or your medical degree debts, and you're banking all this money. Well, now that you're making all this money, you're in the high tax brackets. So you can defer that money, a couple $100,000, kind of like a ginormous 401k for yourself. And you can put a couple $100,000 into there and delay income taxes, put that off, invest, enjoy the benefit of compounding while continuing to defer income taxes, capital gains, dividend taxes. And then when you retire, sell your business or end your pension plan, all of that can roll over to an IRA. And then you can, if you don't need the money, you can wait until you're 59 and a half or 65 or 67 or currently 73. But if you're putting away money in your 50s or 60s, you'll probably be able to wait till 75 because the law has a change in about 2 years where the required minimum distributions don't start until you're 75. So that money can just keep compounding tax deferred. And then when you're taking the money out, whether you start at 62 or 75, if you're not working, maybe your income tax bracket's not quite as high. So you can take out what you want when you need it. And of course, if you have descendants, kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews, whoever you want to give the money to, you can give it to them and they get to create what are called beneficiary IRA accounts, which reminds me, I need to do a segment on that because of some updates and tweaks in the rules, just as reminders. But you could give it to them and they would have 10 years, assuming they're of age, where they could take that money out and enjoy the tax deferred status. And that would be, of course, fantastic for someone who is 20, 25, 30, who's making good money, but they're not in the big tax brackets. They can take out that money, pay income tax on it, and they might bitch and complain, but they didn't do a fucking thing to make that money. You did. So don't worry about it too much. Anyway, more than I ever expected. I was going to talk about that here in the closing comments. Like I said, we have Amanda Marcotte coming up in a couple of episodes. Maybe the next one, maybe 2 out. We're going to talk about Project 2025 and all the craziness with that and with Trump and, Biden's debate thing. And a lot of people have asked me, so here's my current position on this. If it comes down to a Biden and Trump election, as long as Biden has a heartbeat, I'm fucking voting for Biden. Okay, now a lot of other shows won't talk about this stuff because they might be related to or connected to a charity or another organization. This is just me. I can say whatever the fuck I want. And then as a comical note, even if Biden doesn't have a heartbeat, I'm voting for him over Trump. If the Democratic National Convention, if the Democratic Party wants to switch out Biden for somebody else, I will vote for them. I see this as a moment of dread, of possible doom for the United States, and we'll talk about that more in 2020, the 2025 segment with Amanda. But if you don't know if you're registered to vote, go fucking figure it out. Go to your local city hall, your county courthouse, ask them, make a few phone calls, make sure that you're registered, make sure that you're registered to vote in time. If you are not going to be in your house, in your community, when it's time to vote, get a pre-approved ballot in advance, vote in advance, whatever is allowed. And keep in mind, Republicans are changing these rules all the time to make it harder for you to vote. Also keep this in mind if you are on or near a university, if you are in an area that's an urban center, which Republicans would say where black people live, there's often less polling stations, less places you can go vote. There's not enough based on the population. So try to vote early. Try to get a paper ballot. Do whatever you can. You've got to vote. And this is 10 times more important if you live in a state like Florida, like I do. If you live in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, maybe Arizona. These are the states, Georgia. These are the states that are on the bubble. They have historically swung one way or the other, and there's a possibility for it to go for one candidate or the other. If you have financial resources, consider donating to some politician that you like. If you have no extra money, but you have some free time, or you can scrape up some free time, call a local organization, your local office, from the Democratic Congress, Democratic National Committee, I don't know, Democratic Party, and find a way to volunteer. Trump just really cannot be reelected. There's too many people that I care for. There's too many people that I love that will, I expect, lose rights and privileges and opportunities in the United States of America. We're talking about LGBTQ people. We're talking about women. Healthcare, going to be a serious problem. That they're already talking about taking away not just the ability to have an abortion, but the ability to get birth control. Maybe not being able to get birth control through the mail. Maybe not being able to get birth control at all. Maybe not being able to get birth control if, for example, it doesn't even have to do with the fact that you don't want to get pregnant, but that you need that hormone treatment that comes with birth control. I'm going to easily say something that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but that's the point. I don't know. It should be between the person and their doctor, and that's it. Anyway, I'll take a breath and we'll wrap up the show. I will be at Bahacon in August. Hang on. I'm going to pause. You won't know it, but of course I just told you. I'm going to pause and pull up the dates. And to the magic of the pause button, I'm back at Bahacon. So you can go to the website, BAHACON.com. I think there are still tickets available. It is limited in size. Had one of the organizers on a few months ago. It is in 2024. Let's see, here's the date. August 9th through 11th. And it is in Sarnia. I love it. Sarnia, Ontario, Canada, just across the bridge north of Detroit into Canada. We're going to drive there from Chicago. You can, of course, fly in and get picked up or get a rental car, whatever you want to do. Just a sampling of the people that are going to be there. This is just the people that I know, because there's some names I don't know, but I'll get to know them, so it'll be cool. Seth Andrews, Forrest Valkai, Kate Cohen, Yvette Dentremont, Aaron Ra, Abby Hafer, my Spanish and Italian messed that up. Abby Hafer, who's been on the show many times, David Fitzgerald, who we just heard from, Hemet Mehta, and many more, all in one action-packed weekend. And then it finishes with a boat ride. Absolutely fantastic. Very, very, I don't know, it's a good-sized conference. It's not huge, but it has a very familial feel to it. Very family-friendly, guest-friendly. All of the speakers hang out the whole weekend. There might be exceptions, but pretty much everybody the whole weekend. They sit at all different tables, so you get to meet people and talk to people, listen to their presentations. Absolutely fantastic. We went last year, my wife and I. We will be there this year. I highly recommend it. Again, that's Bahacon 2024. And again, it is in August. So escape the summer heat, go to Canada for a weekend, and have a great time. Anywho, now I'm really, really done. Once again, thank you for listening. If you go to Bahacon or some other conference like FFRF or SciCon this fall, and you see me, please feel free to come up and say hello. I'd be happy to meet you in person. Until then, ciao.
Yeah, you know there ain't nothing that can stop our Lord. He's gonna rule forevermore. You know there ain't nothing that can stop our Lord. He's gonna rule forevermore.
I've got a God who's got my back when the devil is attacking. God's always in action, he's up there in heaven. When I come up short, I remember who's my Lord. I've got my armor on with the Bible as my sword. Devil's always attacking, he's always attacking. The devil's always attacking, he's always attacking. When my life is a disaster, I'm leaning on my Savior. When I'm in a bind, I know my God's a chain breaker. Jesus ain't a phony, he came down to save me. He suffered on a tree so that I could be redeemed. Devil's always attacking, he's always attacking. The devil's always attacking, he's always attacking. Yeah, you know there ain't nothing that can stop our Lord. He's gonna rule forevermore. You know there ain't nothing that can stop our Lord. He's gonna rule forevermore.
We're God's own children, adopted to his family. We'll be with him for all eternity. Said it once before that Jesus ain't a phony. 2,000 years ago he paid my debt on Calvary. God knows just cause he's got my back. I'm like a superhero, man, I don't fear no attack. Now I put all my faith in the one true Lord. He's gonna